My name is Ben Stoneham. I am the co-founder and CEO of Autologyx, which is an intelligent robotic process automation platform designed for the sorts of processes that traditional desktop RPA doesn't really handle particularly well. Sure, yeah. So we came about because we set out about 5 years ago to solve a particular problem in operational compliance that was characterised by really complicated processes, very often involving sort of multivariate decision making, data persistence, where the context and the content was really important to the process. And those were the sorts of processes that had traditionally challenged automation. I mean, there were automation solutions like BPM out there, tended to have very big ticket values, big implementation times associated with them. And in the world of compliance, as we originally were addressing it, those sorts of solutions weren't very well suited because the world was very fast moving, and by the time you've implemented that type of solution, very often everything's moved on, and so they never really hit the mark. And we came up with a novel way of building and implementing processes so the engine could run them in a very interactive, responsive way. Solved that problem brilliantly, and then when we took a look at the sort of wider world, we found that actually things that characterised operational compliance were just as applicable in any number of other business situations, and we found ourselves being used in all kinds of areas outside of that original use case. Here we are today. We cover all kinds of different vertical sectors, law, recruitment process outsourcing, legal process outsourcing, retail, a bit of FS, but all the processes are very much sort of characterised around this same idea of sort of complexity, lots and lots of decision paths, reactive decision making, really, as I say, exactly the sorts of things that people have always really needed people to do because they've been challenging to automate previously. What we are seeing is that the groundwork that's been done by people like Blue Prism, who I think, to be fair, were pretty instrumental in coining the RPA and owning the RPA term, is that we're seeing clients who have implemented those sorts of technologies very often in back office applications, the so-called long tail application, have found that technology works really, really well for them, but are now looking and saying, well, actually, I want to now build things for which I don't already have existing desktop applications, and how do I do that? Because the desktop solutions are absolutely fantastic. What you want to do is just simply take a worker out of a process and replace it with something that replicates those steps. But what about if you don't have applications already in place that you want to automate around? If you want to build something from scratch, that's not something that the existing technologies really address, which is really where we step in, hence our focus on innovation. I think that's an interesting question. I mean, I think the ultimate answer is it depends on the context, doesn't it? I mean, our focus is around empowering business on operational people. So, what we aim to do with our platform is actually give those people the tools, give them a system that's easy enough to use so that they can think of a problem that they need to address or an opportunity that they want to go after. Build it themselves in our technology using drag and drop, connect it to all the other things that they've got. So that would be, that would include sort of legacy systems as well as sort of more modern things using APIs and that sort of thing, so that they can then just deploy that into the business and solve the problem there and then, rather than having to go through the conventional, procure, build, deploy, change, change requests and everything that goes with that. I mean, I think all too often IT gets in the way of agility within the business, and that's not really IT's fault. I mean, IT is fantastic at doing the sort of infrastructure type things that they have traditionally done. I'm not sure that they are always the people to be going to for innovation, because they're not necessarily the people who've actually got the problem in the first place. The operational people are. So I think in other cases there's a great case for IT being very involved. So clearly you need to have the support of IT in a lot of instances, because you're going to want people within the business who can facilitate the sorts of things you need to be able to do, talking to systems and those sorts of things. Great, so it's a very interesting question. I think one of the things that we say to all of our customers from the outset is that the pace of change, the way in which technology is becoming convergent, the rise of I can't say the rise of machine learning and AI, but actually the reality is there's not that much new under the sun in that field. I mean, I think there's an awful lot of snake oil being sold when you consider that, for example, the first neural network design was actually something like 1948 or 1950, and really all that's changed since then is we've got a whole lot more processing power and a lot more data. It's just become easier to do. So what we say to our customers is, if you look forward to the next 10 years, and as I say, I firmly believe that automation is going to be the defining, the defining thing of the next decade. It's really hard to predict where we're going to be in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. And what we aim to do, therefore, is to provide them with a fabric layer. We describe our technology as a fabric automation platform, where we're not trying to, second guess what the winning technology will be. What we're enabling people to do is to be really agile around trying things out, iterating through different approaches to solving problems and addressing opportunities. So I think if I was to say anything about what I think in the next 12 months, I think you're going to see some really good practical use cases, actually for some stuff that has been around for quite a long time, that is going to mature through to some really good real world use cases. So for instance, we're doing some stuff around quite straightforward content classification. It's technology that's actually been around for a long time. The challenging thing for businesses has always been, how do I use it in a real world context? And so we're doing some stuff in law with that, which I think in particular is going to be an area that will quickly adopt those sorts of things. But yeah, fantastic times we live in, very exciting, a lot of technology out there. The math underpinning an awful lot of it has been around for a very long time. As I say, neural networks as a principle worked out in the late 1940s, early 1950s. To put it into context, I was at I've been doing something with University College recently with their machine learning department, and somebody there told me that when he designed his very first actual neural network to do some image classification in the 1980s, it had 15 nodes, which I think, to compare to today, you'd be into hundreds of thousands, millions of nodes, whatever. It took him 3 months to train that neural network using the available processing power he had. Today, he can train a network that's got hundreds of millions of nodes in the same amount of time. So, as I said, I think the technology has been there for a very long time. I think the actual number of businesses that are out there that are doing genuine innovation in and around deep learning are small. I mean, unless you're Google and DeepMind and a handful of other places, I think most people are building on research that actually, as I say, has been around for a long time. The question is really not whether or not it is as built. Is it actually doing anything useful? I mean, to take the content classification example, regression, polynomial regression has been around forever. It's nothing new. As I say, the issue has been, how do I, as a business person, get that into a context and use it and train the model in a practical way in my business? And I think what technologies like ours, and I'm sure others here, do is for the first time make that easy to do. So you start to get some real business value from it. And that's why I think the next 12 months is as much going to be about some of that stuff getting realised as it is, anything to do with this sentient, deep learning idea, which I probably agree. I think it's a very, very long way off.